Are you waking up twice, 3, or even more than 4 times a night just to pee? Is your stream weak, hesitant, or frustratingly slow? You're not alone. And what I am about to share might just change the way you think about your body and your future. If you care about natural ways to stay strong, healthy, and in control, especially after 50, hit subscribe to iShare Manhood and stick with me till the end. Because skipping just one part could mean missing a solution that actually works for you. Let me take you back to a night about 3 years ago. It was 2:48 a.m. I checked the clock because, once again, I was up dragging myself to the bathroom. That was the 3rd time that night. My wife turned over and whispered again, and I just stood there in the dark, embarrassed. I felt older than I was at first. I thought it was just part of aging. But when the trips became more frequent, the urgency stronger, and the flow weaker, I knew I couldn't keep ignoring it. That is when I found out what many men never talk about until it is bad. Benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, and enlarged prostate. So let's break this down. Your prostate is a small gland about the size of a walnut sitting just below your bladder. It wraps around the urethra, which is the tube that carries urine out. Its main job, to make some of the fluid that protects and nourishes sperm. But here's the kicker. As you age, your prostate starts to grow. And this growth can squeeze that urethra tighter and tighter, like someone stepping on a garden hose. That's why your stream slows down. That's why you keep running to the bathroom. By age 60, around 70% of men have some degree of prostate enlargement. By 80, that jumps to 80%. Let that sink in 8 out of 10 men. But then this is key. An enlarged prostate doesn't always mean bad symptoms. Some men have a large prostate and barely notice. Others, even a mild enlargement, can make their lives miserable. So what are the signs to watch out for? Going more than 8 times a day feeling like you have to go, and now waking up more than once a night to pee a week. Hesitant, or slow stream difficulty starting your urination. Feeling like you didn't empty your bladder all the way. If you're nodding right now, I was right there with you. Let's get real for a second. Have you ever finished peeing, only to find a few drops of urine sneaking out seconds later after you've zipped up? Larry told me once, "Tom, I thought I was done. But by the time I left the restroom, there was a dark spot on my pants. I had to walk out with my jacket tied around my waist like some embarrassed teenager." That's called post-void dribbling. And it's more common than we like to admit. Intermittency, starting and stopping while peeing, is another one. You feel like you can't fully empty your bladder. And sometimes you get leakage not because you didn't try to make it to the bathroom, but because your bladder was just too full. This is called overflow incontinence. Your bladder literally overflows. The frustrating part is, some men don't even feel that bothered. But for others, these symptoms ruin their daily life, especially the ones who keep waking up at night 2, 3, even 4 times just to pee. And you might think, okay, it's annoying, but it's not dangerous. But here's the truth. Older men who wake up to pee at night are at risk of falling on the way to the bathroom. And once you fall and end up in the hospital, your risk of dying within the next year jumps to 20%. Yes, 20%. Let that sink in. You think it's just a weak stream or an annoying urgency. But it could be what takes away your sleep, your safety, and even your life. And to clear up another myth, BPH is not cancer. Having a large prostate doesn't mean you have prostate cancer. And it doesn't increase your risk of getting it. Still, you deserve to understand why it's happening. Benign prostatic hyperplasia is a complex process. It can be driven by hormones, genetics, and inflammation. And here's the science part. DHT, dihydrotestosterone, is one key player. It's a byproduct of testosterone, and it binds to prostate tissue, causing it to grow. But the puzzle is, testosterone actually drops as we age. So why does the prostate keep growing? Because it's not just hormones. Chronic Low-grade inflammation in the prostate can also promote growth. This inflammation might be triggered by infections, bacterial or viral prostatitis, or hormonal changes that create an inflammatory environment. And honestly, how many of us have ever thought about inflammation when it comes to urination? I sure didn't until the pain, the leaks, and the sleepless nights forced me to dig deeper. So now we know inflammation plays a big role in prostate growth, but what triggers that inflammation? Sometimes it's autoimmune changes. Your own immune system, instead of protecting you, starts irritating your prostate. And sometimes it's changes in the prostate microbiome, the unique mix of bacteria that lives inside your prostate. When inflammation kicks in, it releases certain growth factors like the epidermal growth factor, insulin-like growth factor, and transforming growth factor beta. These guys send signals that tell prostate cells to grow and multiply. And when more cells are created than destroyed, you get what's called cell proliferation, and that means an enlarged prostate. Let me put it this way, your body is always creating new cells and getting rid of old ones. Like your skin, you shed dead skin cells all the time, and your body makes new ones. But in BPH, that balance breaks. More cells grow than die, and over time, the prostate expands. There's another part to this story, oxygen. As the prostate gets bigger, it creates pockets inside with very little oxygen. These low oxygen areas, what doctors call hypoxia, trigger even more inflammation. More inflammation means more growth signals. More growth signals mean more enlargement. It's a vicious cycle: growth, inflammation, low oxygen, then even more growth and more symptoms. I saw this firsthand in a friend of mine, Jeff. He's 57, pretty active, eats okay, no major issues. But suddenly, he was waking up 4 times a night. Not because of coffee or stress, but because of a prostate growing in silence for years. And here's the kicker. Jeff's dad had the exact same problem. Which brings me to the next point. Genetics matter a lot. If your dad, uncle, or brother had BPH before age 60, your risk goes way up. In fact, men with a family history often start showing symptoms in their 40s, decades earlier. So don't brush it off just because you're still young. If you're noticing things like urgency, frequency, or dribbling, your body might be giving you early warning signs. So now we've talked about hormones, inflammation, even genetics. But there's another big risk factor for BPH that many men don't even realize. It's metabolic syndrome. That means things like high blood pressure, diabetes, and belly fat all coming together and silently increasing your risk. In fact, if you have diabetes, your chance of developing BPH more than doubles. That hit close to home for me. My cousin Mark, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at 51. At first, it was just about cutting sugar and taking meds. But what nobody told him was that it could also affect his prostate. Within 2 years, he was waking up 4 times a night, struggling with urgency, and dealing with a stream so weak. He avoided long drives. When his doctor explained the link to BPH, Mark said, "Why didn't anyone tell me this earlier?" That's why I'm sharing this today. Another factor is something called your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response. If it's constantly triggered by stress, lack of sleep, anxiety, it tightens the smooth muscles in your prostate, and that tightening can make BPH symptoms worse. So yes, stress literally makes your urination worse. Now you might be thinking, all right, so what can I actually do to prevent this? We can't change everything. We can't change our age. We can't change our genes. But we can change our lifestyle, and science backs that up. For small things that shrink your prostate, number 1, lose excess weight. Men with a BMI over 35 have more than double the risk of BPH compared to those under 25. If your waist is over 40 inches, your risk goes up by 50%. That's not just fat, it's inflammation. And inflammation is what feeds the fire inside the prostate. Number 2, move your body. Just 20 minutes of walking each day can really help. Studies show that just 2 hours of walking per week reduces your BPH risk by 30%. And if you exercise 6 times a week, you might cut your risk in half. Let that sink in. A few short walks could mean fewer nighttime bathroom trips. Number 3, eat like your prostate depends on it. Because men who eat high-fat red meat every day increase their BPH risk by 30%. But if you eat red meat less than once a week, you're doing your prostate a big favor. Now, flip the plate. 4 or more servings of vegetables a day reduces BPH risk by another 30%. And don't forget foods rich in lycopene, like cooked tomatoes and watermelon. Lycopene is a powerful antioxidant that may protect the prostate and lower inflammation. Research shows that if more than 38% of your daily calories come from fat, your risk of BPH goes up by 31%. And we're not just talking about fast food. Even constant snacking, frying, or heating fats in sauces can tip the balance. Next, chronic conditions. If you've got diabetes, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol, keeping them under control doesn't just help your heart, it protects your prostate too. Because they all fuel one common enemy, chronic inflammation. That slow, silent fire is what makes BPH worse over time. I've seen this firsthand. One of my good friends, Rob, he's 63 now, used to say, "I don't have time to deal with doctors." But after years of ignoring his blood pressure, his nightly bathroom trips went from 1 to 5 times, and no matter how tired he was, he couldn't sleep more than 90 minutes straight. It finally clicked when he fell asleep during a meeting at work. He got checked. His cholesterol was through the roof, blood sugar borderline. After 6 months of lifestyle changes and basic meds, he said to me, "Thomas, I finally sleep through the night. Sometimes it's not your bladder. It's the background noise of everything else going on in your body." Now, here's something you may not have heard about. Certain medications can quietly make your BPH symptoms worse. Antihistamines, yes. Those allergy pills can relax your bladder muscles too much. That means your bladder can't empty completely. Decongestants, like pseudoephedrine, can tighten your prostate muscles, making urination harder. Some antidepressants, especially the older ones called tricyclics, also mess with bladder control. If you've been taking these and noticing weaker flow, more urgency, or incomplete emptying, talk to your doctor. There might be safer alternatives that don't affect your urination. Don't just suffer in silence. By the way, if you've watched this far, thank you. You could be anywhere, doing anything, but you're here, learning to take better care of yourself. And I respect that. Now supplements. This is the part most men get excited about. What can I take over the counter? Thomas, is there a magic pill? Let's talk about the big one, saw palmetto. It was super popular a few years ago. Early studies were hopeful, but more recent high-quality trials, some with over 3,000 men, found that saw palmetto worked no better than a placebo, even at high doses. A placebo is basically a sugar pill, something that feels like medicine but isn't. That doesn't mean it's worthless. Sometimes the act of doing something helps us mentally, even if the physical effect isn't strong. But if you're expecting a dramatic change in urination from saw palmetto alone, you might be disappointed. So, should you completely give up on saw palmetto? Not necessarily. Some men still feel better after using it, and for a few, it genuinely improves symptoms, even though large clinical trials didn't find it more effective than a sugar pill. I know guys who say, "Thomas, I don't know what it is, but it helps me." So if you want to try one supplement, start with that. Just manage your expectations. Next, let's look at another name you might have heard, beta-sitosterol. This one has fewer studies behind it, but some results show improvements in flow rate and symptoms. In plain English, your stream might get stronger. But again, the long-term data isn't there. We don't know what happens after 6 months, 1 year, or longer. Another one, Pygium africanum. That's a bark extract used in Europe. It actually has a Cochrane review, which is one of the highest levels of research quality. They found some improvement in urinary symptoms, but the studies were short-term and mixed in quality. Same story with pumpkin seed extract. You'll see some benefits in symptom scores, but the results aren't consistent. I had a subscriber email me last month he'd been taking pumpkin seed oil capsules for 5 weeks. He said his urgency reduced, but the stream didn't improve much after 2 more weeks. He stopped noticing any effect at all. That's what we see often, mild benefits at first. Then a plateau, then there's stinging nettle. By itself, not much data, but combined with saw palmetto. Studies that tracked men for almost 2 years showed some improvement, and finally lycopene. Yes, eating tomatoes or watermelon may help, but the supplement form of lycopene doesn't have strong research backing, so I'd rather you get your lycopene from food, not a pill, and that brings us to a really important point. Supplement quality matters a lot. One study tested 27 different saw palmetto products. Only 7 had the correct amount of active ingredients. 10 didn't even meet basic criteria. So when you grab a bottle at the store, you might be paying for something that doesn't work or worse. Isn't what the label says it is. And remember, natural doesn't always mean safe. Botox is natural, but too much of it can kill you. Just because it comes from a plant doesn't mean it's harmless. That's why I always tell my friends, if you're going to take a supplement, review the ingredients, talk to your doctor, and check are you already taking something with their same ingredient. A lot of guys accidentally double or triple their dose because they don't realize multiple bottles contain the same stuff. That's a recipe for problems. Before you even consider taking a supplement, let me tell you this. Simple changes in your daily habits can sometimes be just as effective, or even more than popping pills. I always start with this. How much are you drinking? Your urine should be a light yellow color, like diluted lemonade, if it's darker. You're probably not drinking enough if it's completely clear like water all the time. You're drinking too much. An occasional clear urine is fine, but if it's always like that, you're definitely overdoing it. And that can actually lead to more nighttime bathroom trips. Now, some guys think, if I drink less, I'll pee less. It makes sense on the surface, but here's the problem. When you drink too little, your urine becomes concentrated. That irritates the bladder lining, and guess what? That makes your symptoms worse. So it's not just about less or more, it's about the right balance. Next, think about what's actually going into your body. Certain foods and drinks can irritate your bladder lining, and cutting them out for just a few days might give you real relief. This isn't like those complicated elimination diets where you need weeks to see results. Even 2 or 3 days can show you whether something is triggering your symptoms. So, what should you look out for? Caffeine. That's the #1 offender. It's not just in coffee or tea. I've seen men drink 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day, and they wonder why their bladder is freaking out. But caffeine hides in other places too. Chocolate, some ice creams, sparkling energy drinks, even some of those trendy Celsius or flavored waters. So check the label. Then there's alcohol. Alcohol is a diuretic. It makes you urinate more, but it also irritates the bladder. Even that 1 glass of wine every night, it might be contributing to why you wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. Even that 1 glass of wine every night, it might be contributing to why you wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. Other bladder triggers include citrusy fruits and juices, tomato-based products, yes. Even though lycopene is good for prostate health, for some men, tomatoes irritate the bladder. Spicy foods, artificial sweeteners, carbonated drinks. You don't have to cut everything out forever. but it might be worth removing 1 or 2 items for a few days and see how your body responds. At dinner especially, be mindful of what you drink. If you keep waking up during the night, your last beverage of the day might be the real culprit. If you're waking up multiple times at night to pee, that's the first place I look. But if your symptoms are more during the day, then we have to talk about what you're drinking and when. If you rate drinking a lot right before bed, especially within the last 2 hours, you're almost guaranteed to wake up. Try cutting back a bit before bedtime and see if that helps. You might be surprised how much of a difference it makes. Now, here's one thing that often gets overlooked: constipation. Most people have no idea that constipation can actually make urinary symptoms worse. Here's why. When your bowels are backed up, your rectum fills with stool that puts pressure on your bladder since it's located right in front of the rectum. And that pressure, it makes your bladder more sensitive, more twitchy, and a lot more likely to act up. So if your bathroom visits feel frequent, urgent, or incomplete, take a moment and ask, am I constipated too? Personally, I've seen good results with simple natural options like dried prunes, but some folks also do well with over-the-counter choices like Miralax. Dr. Rena, whose research I've been following, also mentions a bowel recipe she recommends often. Whatever method you choose, the key is to stay regular. You'd be surprised how much that alone can ease bladder symptoms. Next, weight loss. Even a modest drop, just 8% of your body weight, can make a huge difference. And of course, one more thing we can't ignore: smoking. Smoking is a powerful bladder irritant. It doesn't just hurt your lungs or heart, it hits your urinary tract too. So if you needed another reason to quit, here it is. Do it for your prostate. Do it for your sleep. Do it for yourself. Now, let's say you've tried all these lifestyle changes. You've been careful with your fluids, cleaned up your diet, quit smoking, and maybe even give supplements a try. But your symptoms are still there. So, what next? Let's talk about medications. We won't get into surgeries today because there are so many options now that deserves a whole episode on its own. If you're curious about specific procedures, leave a comment below or on Spotify. I'll make sure to include them next time. For now, the most common medical treatment is alpha blockers. You might recognize names like tamsulosin Flomax or alfuzosin. These medications relax the muscles around the prostate and the bladder neck, making it easier to urinate. When those muscles are more relaxed, the urine flows more freely. Many men notice a difference in just a few days, but full results can take up to a month. But, and this is important, these meds can have side effects. One you definitely need to know about is retrograde ejaculation. Tamsulosin in particular has a high rate of these. We'll get into what that means and why it matters in the next part. Let's continue where we left off: retrograde ejaculation. What that means is, when you ejaculate, the semen doesn't come out the usual way. Instead, it flows backward into the bladder. So, you either notice a lower volume or no fluid at all. It can feel confusing and even alarming, especially if you don't know. It's a side effect of medication. Now, not every alpha blocker causes this at the same rate. Alfuzosin, for example, has a lower risk of retrograde ejaculation. So if this side effect is a concern, it's worth discussing that with your doctor. Another thing to be aware of: some men get lightheaded when they stand up too fast. It's called orthostatic hypotension. Basically, your blood pressure dips when you change positions too quickly. You might feel dizzy, woozy, or like you need to sit back down right away. There's one more odd but important side effect: floppy iris syndrome. If you're going to have eye surgery, especially for cataracts, you need to tell your eye surgeon and your urologist. These medications can make eye procedures harder for ophthalmologists, so everyone needs to be on the same page. Alright, now let's talk about the next class of medications: 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. These include finasteride and dutasteride. They work by blocking the conversion of testosterone into DHT, which, if you remember, is the hormone that fuels prostate growth. So in effect, these drugs shrink the prostate over time, but this process takes patience. Some men start seeing results at 3 months, others may need 6 to 9 months. Interestingly, these meds are also used in lower doses for hair loss, which some consider a bonus side effect. But there are 2 major things you need to know. First, a small group of men report sexual side effects that can be distressing. Loss of libido, difficulty with arousal, and even long-term sensitivity changes. For some, these symptoms fade over time, but for others, they may linger. I strongly suggest talking with your doctor about this before starting the medication. Second, while these medications do not cause prostate cancer, they can complicate how we screen for it. Here's how. They lower your PSA level by about 50%. That's important because PSA, prostate-specific antigen, is the marker doctors use to detect possible prostate cancer. So if your PSA looks normal, but you're on finasteride or dutasteride, it might actually be twice as high as it appears. And according to some data, men who are on these meds and still develop prostate cancer may be more likely to have a higher grade form, more aggressive, more serious. Again, that doesn't mean these drugs cause cancer, but it does mean you and your doctor need to interpret the results very carefully while on them. This is where clear communication really matters. Don't hesitate to ask questions, track your results, and understand every change in your body. We are not done yet. Next, we'll look at when it might be time to consider a surgical option. Now there's one last group of medications that rarely gets mentioned but can make a real difference. I'm talking about phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors. Yes, the same kind that are often used for erectile dysfunction. Tadalafil is one example at low daily doses. It doesn't just help with erections, it relaxes the smooth muscles in the prostate, improving urinary symptoms. 2. It's especially helpful if you're dealing with both ED and BPH. 1 pill, 2 problems addressed. Side effects. Some men report mild congestion or muscle aches, a head cold feeling. Maybe a stuffy nose, but at lower doses. Most people tolerate it well. Here's another thing to consider. You can combine medications. You can take an alpha blocker like Flomax and a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor like finasteride at the same time. This combo works especially well for men with larger prostates or more severe symptoms. Several strong clinical trials back this up. So if your goal is to avoid surgery, talk with your doctor about combination therapy. It might be the middle ground you're looking for. But let's say you've tried medications, you've made lifestyle changes, you've looked into supplements, and you're still struggling. Here's the good news. There are now more treatment options for BPH than ever before. Less invasive procedures, modern surgical techniques, new devices with quicker recovery. All of them are designed to improve your life, not just your numbers on a chart. And I'll be diving deep into all of that right here in future episodes. I'll go through every surgical option, explain what to expect, review the data, and even bring in world-class experts who've performed thousands of these procedures. I want you to have the clearest roadmap possible because this isn't just about your prostate. It's about getting your life back. So if today's episode helped you in any way, do me a favor. Take a screenshot, share it. Send it to someone who needs it. There are millions of men out there silently struggling with these symptoms, and they deserve better. This is why I do what I do, to give you free, honest, evidence-based education so you can make the decisions that feel right for your body. Take care of yourself, my friend, because you are worth it. This video was created by iShare Manhood using AI voice and visuals to bring real true stories about enlarged prostate to life. The insights are based on lived experiences, not medical advice. and aim to support men over 50 with honest, grounded guidance.